What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where today I want to start talking about the guys that we drafted and really start to get into detail about these guys, right? There's probably a lot that you've heard, especially about the guys that we drafted earlier in the draft. And here I'm obviously going to be starting with the first round pick 15 in the NFL draft. Laiatu Latu. And this is a guy that a lot of people are saying was probably the best defender in the draft, right? If you take away the medical history, probably the best defender in the draft, and it's not particularly close. A lot of people saying, this could be a guy that looks NFL ready, double sack, kind of guy, his first season in the NFL. And as I've looked into him, the more I look into him, the more I agree with that fact. And the reason that I'm agreeing with that and the reason I love this pick so much is something that Laiatu was talking about, immediately after getting drafted, and he had his quick press conference with the media, and then something he said in his introductory press conference. So we're going to take a look at these and see what he had to say, because I thought that both of these were really important, right? What he's saying about this situation is important for what people think about him and his medical history.
You had neck fusion surgery.
Cervical,
That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And without a better way to ask this, why wouldn't Washington clear you to play again?
Well, it was at that time. It was COVID, and it was just a funky time. And the doctor, I mean, it just wasn't handled like in the right way. I didn't have any physical examinations with any doctor at that time. So really, it was just an opinion of somebody's that without even looking at my physical, without giving me a test and stuff like that. So I mean, I feel like they were just doing what they felt best, but at the same time, I feel like it wasn't really handled in the best way.
So right there, you can hear that, like, he felt like he could have continued his football career, and he didn't want to give up football, but he felt like the doctors weren't doing enough. Right, they had gotten to a conclusion and kind of stuck with it, and he talks more about that in this clip here.
I was trying to fight with them, because I don't think it was handled in the right way. So I was trying to fight with them, and they weren't, being, they weren't being reciprocated. So I really just had to, tap into a different mindset. And what I really wanted, I didn't want to give up football.
Okay, so right there, talking about, not wanting to give up football, the fact that he didn't want to give up his football dream, and the doctors just weren't doing enough. He felt like they weren't doing enough there at Washington. He ends up not playing for 2 years, right? Then ends up going to UCLA. The doctors there were comfortable with clearing him, which is why he ended up going there. And he ends up playing and was durable. Like, the important part of that is he played 2 years of college football. He was one of the best at his position, and he stayed durable through the whole thing, right? Didn't have any issues with the neck, didn't have any other issues. So I really like the pick. You look at who he is as an athlete and what he compares to, right? He has a 9.37 RAS. He's 6'4" and a half, 260 pounds, runs a 4.6, has a 32-inch vertical, and his broad jump is over 9.5. So this is a guy that is an amazing athlete. Even his agility scores, right? Shuttle cone is a 4.34, and his three cone is just over 7. So the agility's there. The speed, especially for his size, is elite, right? And we're getting an Oos. You put Ooses on the team, you're going to be good, right? DeForest Buckner is a freak of nature. Glad to have him on the team. We're getting another one on the defensive line. And this is a guy, when you just go watch the games and watch the highlight. You don't even have to look up games. Look up the highlights of him. Look up the highlights of TJ Watt. Just looking at how these guys look on the field, it's so similar, which is crazy because obviously at this point, TJ Watt, one of the best in the NFL. He's extremely polished. So looking at TJ Watt and how good he is and the production that he's able to get, and then you look at Latu, and I just think the similarities are crazy. Coming from a college kid, coming from a guy that had to take 2 years off, and you can tell that over time he just worked on polishing his game and making sure he's the best in the nation. That's what he was in college. His production score coming out is the best. His overall grade, when you take production and athleticism, at least on his draft profile on NFL.com, he's the first of all defensive end and edges. So when it comes down to it, Latu is one of the best in the nation, right? We were talking about Dallas Turner. coming out of this draft. A lot of people thought Dallas Turner would be the first edge guy to come off the board, but Latu was always right there in people's mocks because of how good he is. The only question was the medical. Obviously, the Colts are comfortable with the medical. The more I learn about this situation, the more I'm comfortable with the medical. So I feel really good about this pick. I think, a lot of people immediately upon the pick and going to research more about him, I started thinking this was a guy, again, that's like TJ Watt. That's become the popular comparison for Latu is TJ Watt. But I think it's a perfect one. Again, when you go look at the tape and look at, like, he has every move in his repertoire for a guy in college, being able to have not only the motor that he has, but you hear a lot of people talk about the bend, right? Coaches will talk about the bend that some of these elite guys have, right? Robert Mathis, Dwight Freeney had a really good bend. TJ Watt has really good bend. Being able to have that bend coming off the edge, especially at 6'4.5", he's a big dude. Being able to have the flexibility and the speed to have that bend and to get around the tackle, like, it's so important. And that's what makes the elite guys having that bend and having different moves that they can make, right? That's really the issue with Quiddy. Quiddy has some good moves, but he doesn't have the consistency of being able to have. He doesn't have enough in his repertoire to be able to do the different things and be able to do it consistently. Whereas Latu, like, the reason he can be a double-digit sack guy in his first year is because he has all the moves, and not only does he have the moves, but he has the counter moves. And obviously, he's going to continue to develop and continue to work on different things. But having what he has already is why he's going to come into the NFL, have a really, as long as he can stay on the field, real good look at being able to be defensive rookie of the year. Like, will probably be the favorite for that for most of the season, if not the entire season. I really think this is a guy that can make a big impact early. The only thing that's going to hinder that is, like, do guys that have been in the league for a while, like Kwity Paye and like Samson Ebicom, do they get the starting nod because they're making more money? And I don't think Quiddy's going to be making more money at this point. A few years later, was it been 4 years since Quiddy got drafted and Latu was taken higher. So, there's a reason we could look at Latu starting on that side and being the Leo, but we're also looking at Samson Ebicom, who came in, I thought did well last year. But when you look at numbers, like, the reason we were talking about needing an edge is because the Colts need more consistent pressure. They got 50 sacks last year, was second or third in the NFL, but we need more consistent pressure. We talked about that so much here on this channel, and Latu's going to be able to provide that. Samson Ebicom was like 27th in the league or something like that at the position last year in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. So not great. Nobody on the team, especially the edges, were not consistent getting pressure. Latu could be that guy, and he could start in either position. It'll be interesting to see as we continue to get deeper on the defensive line, who's going to be, the starting guys, who's going to be the rotation, how much is Latu going to be on the field. I feel like a guy that can make such a difference in both the run game and the pass game should be on the field a lot. But again, he's going to be a rookie. Rookies, generally have a learning curve that has to happen. Right now, Josh Downs didn't really have that. He started immediately last year. Some guys can, some guys can. I think Latu can. And Steichen doesn't mess around. In Frank Reich's regime, I think Latu might not start day one, but Shane Steichen seems to be a different animal, and I'm still trying to get used to it. He'll only keep the guys on the team that he thinks are going to help us win. The guys that he thinks can help us win are going to be the guys that are on the field. Latu could be that, and probably will be that in some capacity. But again, it'll be interesting to see who the starters end up being, and whether or not Kwity Paye's fifth-year option gets picked up and what happens with him. We've talked so much about that situation on this channel. We'll continue to talk about that as time goes on. So make sure you subscribe with notifications on. We're going to keep talking about these draft picks as the days go on, and I want your opinion on all of it as we go forward. So again, make sure you have those notifications turned on so you get notified when all these videos do come out. Of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.